Whisperers demand. The vault's heart, the massive diesel engine that had been their ancestors' prized possession, was silent. It was a beast of steel and iron, and it demanded two things the vault lacked: black blood and the lightning's touch. The black blood was a heavy, viscous fuel, an oil so thick it was more like sludge than conventional diesel. It was the only fuel the massive engine was designed to run on, the only sustainable energy source in the post-calamity world. The lightning's touch was the high-amperage battery required to turn the colossal starter motor, the engine's key. Without these, the Ghoul-Getter, the massive armored vehicle Marius had spent years building, would remain a monument to a forgotten dream. The elder, Vlad, pointed to the acid flats on the crumbling map, marking a zone known for the forgotten pumps. There is our fuel, Nikolai. There is the black blood. The journey into the acid flats. The acid flats were a 20-mile stretch of rust-colored, crusting earth, where the ground occasionally hissed and bled toxic pools. The journey was slow, grueling, and quiet. We used our last remaining fuel to get close, then pushed the rest of the way with our meager scrap metal cart. Our group was small: Marius, the visionary mechanic; Vlad, the elder, who insisted on leading the dangerous mission; Anna and Eliza, two young but fierce guards; and myself, Nikolai, the scribe, tasked with documenting the moment the vault's survival machine came to life. We arrived at dusk. The forgotten pumps were nothing more than a rusted skeletal structure built over a vent shaft. It looked like a rotting metal flower reaching for a toxic sun. And we were not alone. 3 raiders, the acid bandits, notorious for their fast, scavenged vehicles, had already found the location. The forgotten pumps. We slipped into the shadows of the ruins. The air smelled of sulfur and old oil. Marius quickly determined the raiders hadn't noticed the hidden access panel to the vent shaft. "The fuel pipe goes straight down to the reservoir," Marius whispered, attaching our hose and our 2 jerry cans to the pump's valve. "The power supply for the pump's lights is probably the lightning's touch." We descended into the narrow vent shaft. It was stifling, and the silence was broken only by the slosh of the thick black blood filling the first jerry can. Down below, sitting next to a corroded terminal, was the massive, heavy-duty battery, the lightning's touch. I finally reached the ladder. I couldn't carry the battery and climb. I had to choose. I wrapped the thin piece of rope we carried around the battery handles, leaving the rope end dangling. "Marius, we can't carry it. We need to pull it up with the hose later," I yelled, knowing the risk. Marius looked at the battery, then back at the hose still filling the second jerry can. He made a snap decision, the mechanic's logic overruling survival fear. He cut the fuel flow, sealed the second can, and tossed it to me. "Go, get out. Tell the elder we have the fuel and the battery is ready to pull." I grabbed the 2 heavy cans, slung them awkwardly over my shoulders, and began the climb. The moment my head cleared the vent, I saw the chaos. The contained catastrophe. The raiders were 3 men, covered in scrap metal and wielding scavenged clubs. Their car, a rusting, spiked monstrosity, was parked 20 feet away, its engine running hot and impatient. Vlad and Anna were already engaged, drawing the raiders away from the vent. Eliza was standing guard, her face pale, ready to use a crude smoke maker, a bundle of dried herbs and oil-soaked rags, as a distraction. "Fuel!" I gasped, dropping the 2 heavy jerry cans onto the unstable ground. The smell of the heavy black blood was overpowering. Vlad immediately shifted his focus, his eyes darting between the raiders and the open vent. He realized the vent itself was the weapon. "Anna, Eliza, keep them close. Nikolai, tell Marius, pressure now." I roared the command down the shaft. "Marius, release the pressure, the black blood." The biggest raider, sneering with greedy contempt, lunged at me, aiming for the jerry cans. "Little worm, that's our oil." I sidestepped, letting him charge past me, aiming straight toward the flimsy, rusting vent opening. The surrounding crust, weakened by acid, cracked violently under his weight. He stumbled, his leg plunging into the foul, viscous sludge that had leaked from the pipe, the raw, toxic black blood of the earth. He howled in pain and disgust. The distraction was timed perfectly. From the shaft, a plume of thick, oily black smoke erupted. the whisperer of fire exhaling 40 years of pressurized foul air and sludge. The smoke was acrid and instantly blinding. The two remaining raiders staggered, coughing. One turned toward their vehicle, but Vlad, moving like a shadow, intercepted him, his machete flashing only to disarm, not wound, sending the raider's club spinning into the dust. The third raider, seeing his partners neutralized, made a dash back to their running vehicle. "The battery!" Vlad roared, scrambling to the rope and the massive block of the lightning's touch. "We need the battery!" We heaved together, tearing the heavy block across the lip of the vent. The rope snapped, but the battery was safe. The third raider, now near his car, turned to face us. But he didn't count on the unstable ground. Eliza, seeing her chance, threw her smoke-maker right beneath his feet. The sudden flare and stench of burning oil and herbs made the raider flinch. "The wheels are turning, Marius!" Vlad shouted down. "Get up here! We take the beast!" Marius scrambled out of the shaft, grime covering his face, a look of savage elation in his eyes. He surveyed the scene. Two raiders immobilized or disarmed and their wicked running car unguarded. Vlad gave the order. "We don't kill them. We take their machine. We make them run." Marius, ignoring the smoke, ran to the raider's vehicle. He jumped onto the crude driver's seat, expertly shifting the gears. The engine, a high-pitched, roaring beast, pulled instantly, the wheels spitting acidic dust. We had defeated the machine's masters and claimed their metal monster. The Vault's new fleet. We used the captured vehicle to tow the rest of our gear, the heavy battery, the 2 jerry cans of black blood, and the now silent Raiders car, all the way back to the Vault. The Raiders vehicle was a marvel of brutal lightweight engineering, spiked tires, scrap metal plating, and a roaring engine that contrasted sharply with the future ghoul-getter's heavy, low-frequency diesel heartbeat. "Look at this, Elder," Marius said, pointing to the engine. "This isn't just old military diesel. This is the red blood of the before world. Refined gasoline, high octane. It burns cleaner, but it's fragile, demanding. It's what powers the Raiders' speed and aggression." The engine of the captured car was lighter, faster, and ran on a fuel that was running out across the entire continent. The ghoul-getter, designed by Marius, would run on the thick, sustainable black blood, heavy oil, biofuel of the future. The two machines were philosophical opposites. "What do we call the spoiled child of the before world, Marius?" Vlad asked, gesturing to the captured car. "It doesn't deserve the honor of our names." Marius ran his hand over a spiked wheel. "It comes from the acid flats, Elder. It runs on speed and arrogance. It will be our scout, our fast mover, our eyes on the road, driven by its own folly." I stepped forward, remembering the horror and the triumph of the vent. "The acid roller," I suggested. "It rolls on poison and runs on borrowed time." Vlad nodded, a rare smile creasing his weathered face. "The acid roller it is. We will strip the spikes, plate it with our own steel, and use its speed for our missions. It will run on the red blood until the supply is gone, but it will save the lives of those who drive the sustainable ghoul-getter." The next day, the Vault had its first full-size machine running, the heavy, thrumming ghoul-getter, still awaiting its first test run, and the captured fast and light acid roller. "All right, Nikolai," Marius said, stepping away from the wiring of the ghoul-getter. "We have the Whisperer controlling the fuel, the Waker connected to the battery, and a full tank of black blood. It's time to see if the angel combustion smiles on us." The community gathered in the main cavern. Vlad and 2 other strong men helped Marius turn the heavy crank handle. Grind, grind, grind. Then, in a single, massive, deafening roar, the engine caught. Ka-thunka, thunka, thunk. Smoke, raw, oily, wonderful smoke, billowed from the exhaust pipe. It was alive. Vlad stepped back, his face smeared with soot, watching the engine thrum with contained power. He looked at me, his eyes full of pride. "The ghoul-getter is born, Nikolai," he announced, his voice hoarse from the effort. "We have the acid roller for speed, and the ghoul-getter for survival. Write that down. Write down the moment the world came back to life." I pulled out my journal, ignoring the grease on my hands, and scribbled the date. Year 40 AF. The day the engine spoke, and the day the fleet was born. The question of blood. I put the pencil down. A shadow had fallen over my page. Marius. "Nikolai, Vino, come," he said, his voice quiet. "Let's get some crusty air. I've got a deal for you. You tell me what's eating your mind, and I'll tell you some more about the before world. Deal?" "Deal," I replied, the word escaping me before my mind could catch up. We sat on the edge, my favorite spot. Marius looked at me with those big, round brown eyes, a faint smile playing on his lips. Then the question came, an inquiry, searching for a truth he already held. "Esti băiatul lui Vlad, cu adevărat?" "Are you Vlad's boy? Truly?" "No, I am not his son," I replied quickly. I explained how Vlad risked everything to pull me out of the ruins when I was just a bucket-sized infant, days after the big nothing, the moment caused by that rocket, the big thunder. He is the elder, and yes, I call him my father. I would give my life for him. I trust him without question, knowing he is right. Always. Then, suspicion gripped me. "Why do you need to know all this, Marius? Are you planning to leave, form your own tribe, and come back to kill us?" Marius stared at me, his smile gone. "Never think like that again, kid. He saved my life too, remember? The thought of harming this family will never cross my mind." He leaned in. "Kid, you are my son, my true son. She was your mother. Vlad may not remember me, but I am his lost son he speaks of." He offered the proof, the secret that would shatter everything. "Next time you're alone with him, ask him this, something no one in the vault knows. Who is Paco?" That was his nickname when he was 21, young, like you. His friends called him Paco because he was too shy to talk to girls, named after some character in a movie from that time. Ask him. He will tell you. He is my father. He just doesn't remember. Too much trauma, even for a soldier like him. I cried. The air left my lungs. I couldn't wait no more. This had to be the truth. I told Marius this reunion would be a good thing, but it had to be our secret, because the vault might rebel against the idea of blood ties overriding the elder's authority. "But why didn't you say anything until now?" I asked. Marius looked at me, his expression earnest. "Remember when you and Vlad found me? I asked you that question, are you Vlad's boy? In the hope that Vlad would answer, that I could hear him call your name. I felt something inside my soul when I saw you. I don't know what it was, but it felt like I knew you for ages. I recognized your little face." He paused, then delivered the final blow. "Let me prove to you that I am who I'm claiming to be. Under your right arm you have a leaf mark, a birthmark. Tell me, am I wrong?" That was something that only me and the elder knew. But to make sure I wasn't mistaken, I scrambled back toward a polished metal skin on the acid roller. The best mirror we had. I raised my right arm and looked closely. There it was, faint and brownish, shaped exactly like a leaf. I tried to wipe it off. It wouldn't budge. My heart was racing. I wanted to scream, but I needed to keep it low so the vault wouldn't get suspicious and betray us, thinking we might harm them. I ran back to Marius and jumped into his arms crying. No one but the elder knew this mark. Marius hugged me tight and whispered, "Te iubesc, copile." I love you, kid. The bond was sealed. A new secret family formed in the shadows of the vault. Now I needed to know about the elder. I ran to him only to find him sleeping. I wanted to wake him to ask him about Paco, but it wouldn't be a good idea. I said to myself, "There is enough time, Nikolai, just wait." I stopped myself from waking the elder and went back to Marius. "We have a deal," I told him. "It's your turn to tell me more about the before world. And maybe someday, what happened to us, how we got lost from one another. I need to know that too, but not now. Just the before world, for now. The before world and the loss." Marius looked at me. "A deal is a deal, kid, and I keep my promises. Let me tell you about the United States of Europe, USE. It was painted as a union of countries that were trying to connect by any means, so they wouldn't go into conflict again between themselves." I looked at him and asked, "Again?" What do you mean they fought each other in the before world? He looked at me. I could feel his sadness kicking in. Yes, Nikolai, they did. A very, very long time ago. And in the history we learned in the schools about our past back then, this place that was called Romania was a land that many empires wanted to control. Ottomans, Austro-Hungarian, Russian, the Poles, the Bulgars. They all wanted a piece of our land. Decades later, I interrupted him. What are those? I never heard of them. Scavengers? He smiled. Yes, Nikolai, kind of scavengers, but not like the ones we know now, in a different way. You see, Romania was rich in minerals and precious metals. Like that polished metal skin? I interrupted again. He laughed. No, Nikolai, it was gold, platinum, nickel, many others, and they wanted that. Romania was rich in oil. It was the first in continental Europe to have an oil industry, back in the year of 1857. Wow, was that long ago? How long ago was that? Many years ago, Nikolai. I don't know exactly how many now, but let me continue. In 2007 was the year when Romania joined the United States of Europe. They treated us, the Romanians, as second-class citizens in the USE. There was a thing called Schengen, which allowed travel free through any state that was part of the USE. But for Romanians, that right came very late, after many years of being part of the USE. Romania fully joined the Schengen area on January 1st, 2025. I remember how foolish we were to believe they respected us and treated us equally. They asked the Romanian state to sell their oil industry to others in order to be accepted in the USE. We went from bad to worse in a few months after. It wasn't good for Romania. People started to leave their country to find a better life, just to find themselves exploited by the rich from other states from the USE. What was the travel, you say? You could go anywhere without being hunted down like we are now? I asked. He replied, yes, no one was hunted down. You could walk outside, take a train, and wake up in a different country the next day, all without needing a weapon or hiding from acid rollers or scavengers. The only hunting was by police, and only if you broke the law. He continued, his voice heavy with the memory of past injustice. They were exploited. It meant they were often forced into working for far less money than the locals, in jobs that were dirty and dangerous, all while being treated like outsiders. They traveled for freedom and found a different kind of cage. Stop there, I said. How bad was it? It is a lot of things that I never heard before. I don't even understand. Marius looked at me and said, that is how we got lost from one another. I was in another state part of the USE to save some money for our family when the big nothing was provoked. And before the rocket struck, I managed to get back home only to find out that your mother had left for a shelter, as the 10 Years' War was getting worse by the day. They moved her from that shelter, and that is when somebody snatched you from your mom. When I found her, she was alone and crying in a half-demolished shelter where she had been last time with you. That's where I found her. I asked Marius, was the person that snatched me him, the elder? He replied, no, Nikolai, it wasn't him. What she told me, it wasn't him. It was somebody else that was shot, and the building he was in collapsed. That is where the elder heard your cry and risked his life to get you out. I stopped him right there. Tell me, do you know who snatched me? Did Mom tell you who it was? My blood was hot with anger. I needed a name, a face. If I ever found him. I didn't know what I'd do, and I suspected that's exactly why Marius was holding back. The sheer force of that violent desire made me stop. I couldn't dwell on him now. There was a more immediate, aching question. Tell me, what was her name, Marius? My mom's name? I saw a tear well up in his eye, but he held it back. He pulled me into a fierce, desperate hug. Marius looked at me. Her name was Oana. She was the sweetest person, and she loved you so much, kid. He gripped me tighter, his voice breaking. She called me every single day to tell me about you. How you slept, how you cried when you couldn't see her, the first words you spoke, the first steps you took, your falls, pictures of you every single day. I'm sorry, kid. I only saw you growing up in pictures and tiny voice messages. Forgive me, I wasn't there. The pain radiating off him, the crushing weight of his regret, hit me right in the soul. I looked up at his face, lifted my hand, and gently wiped a tear that had escaped, and immediately said, "You're here now. That's all that matters. And when the Elder knows who you really are, he'll get even stronger for us. He'll never let anything happen to us, I know it. I feel it." Marius began fumbling slowly with the patched rag of his jacket. With a deliberate, slow movement, he pulled out a small, worn, plastic-wrapped pouch. Inside was a small, creased photograph. My mother, Oana. I carefully slid the photo out of the plastic, a tiny shield against the world's dust. Oana's face was sunlit, framed by dark, wavy hair, smiling into a bright, impossible world. Her eyes were wide, gentle, and utterly free of the terror that governed this new reality. She looked safe, normal. The image held no dust, no acid, no fear. It was a fragment of the before world. That's when I said, "She was beautiful," I whispered, touching the laminated surface with a hesitant finger, confirming the reality of the warmth in her eyes. "She looks happy." Marius, trembling, replied, "She was. When she talked about you, she glowed like that. That picture. It was taken the day before the first frontier collapse, near the old border entry point." I gripped the photo tightly, then slowly placed it back in the pouch, tucking it inside my own thin shirt right over my heart. It was a weight, but not a heavy one. It felt like a promise. "And we find the lost map now. We find what the Elder needs. We do it for her, Marius." Marius grabbed my shoulder. "All right, kid, the map. But we can't just walk out there. The Elder gave you clues, right? About where to start looking for the map?" Nikolai sat back, the image of Oana searing itself into my memory, guiding me. "Yes. He sent me images in the last deep sleep. A building, broken but tall, with 4 pillars near where the old river divide used to run. He called it the Pillar Archive." "The Pillar Archive. That's the central bank," Marius said. "It's miles away across the worst of the acid flats. It'll take us weeks. We need supplies and we need a vehicle that can handle the grit." "Yes, Marius." "The Elder also showed me something else, Marius. A place nearby. A safe place. The Hidden Depot. He said we will find what we need there." The Hidden Depot. The air, usually still and cold at night, hummed with a low metallic energy as they approached the Hidden Depot. It was a sealed underground garage entrance, half swallowed by sand and rusting vines. It took Marius, using a scavenged length of rebar as a lever, 20 minutes of brutal effort to peel back the reinforced steel door. Inside, the air was stale but dry, preserving a trove of artifacts from the before world. Marius immediately spotted the rations and water purifiers, but Nikolai felt the Elder's nudge, pulling him toward a darkened corner where stacked crates shielded something larger. It was a military-grade communication radio, a squat, battered unit with a full solar array still attached, and a massive telescopic antenna mast. "The Elder wants us to use this to find others. He says if we work together, we can collect resources, grow food, and survive long enough to reach the archive." Marius. "A radio. That's a lifeline, kid. Maybe the Elder's smarter than I thought. If we can reach some settlements, we won't have to cross the acid flats alone." While Marius checked the power banks, Nikolai's gaze settled on a locked aluminum cabinet near the radio. With a sharp mental focus, he felt the faint, distant click of a tumbler's releasing. The Elder had guided his hand again. Inside, tucked beneath a layer of moldy medical supplies, was a thick, oil-stained chemical logbook. It wasn't about weapons or maps. It was a pre-war research binder, open to a page titled Procedure Alpha 7, Black Blood Stabilization and Distillation. The logbook detailed the precise laboratory steps to purify the raw, caustic fluid of the acid rollers into a stable, non-corrosive substance, red blood. Marius asked, "What is that, a recipe book?" Nikolai's face was grim as he read the notes on the chemical properties of black blood. "It's the process," I replied. "The Elder said the acid roller needs the red blood to be a scout, to be strong enough and stable enough for the long journey. This tells us how to make it." but we need a full lab setup, specialized heat exchange coils, and specific catalysts. Marius stared at the logbook, then at the radio, a fierce determination hardening his jaw. So we have the directions to the pillar archive and a radio to call for help. But before we leave, we need to find a place that still has a working chemistry lab, or at least the components. The lost map and red blood go hand in hand now. A new map and a fleet of monsters. Nikolai didn't wait for Marius to comment further on the brutal reality of the black blood procedure. The Elder's influence was surging, turning fear into focus, and I pulled out a fresh, uncreased sheet of topographical paper from a depot drawer. I created a new map for better accuracy and added markers of the most important places for supplies we need. I traced the charcoal markings, the new map a complex web of survival. The Elder guided my hand while you were prying that door. Marius leaned in, his hardened gaze tracing the 3 new critical markers. The closest point is marked by a deep coil, the black blood tombs. It's where the rollers gather and die. We can get the raw fluid we need there, the black blood. It's dangerous, but it's the first ingredient. I traced a second mark further north labeled simply, Lab Parts. Then this spot, Lab Parts. The Elder says the components to build the distillation rig are here. We get the specialized coils and vessels to make the red blood, stabilizing the roller so it can scout the way to the archive. Marius nodded, his mind calculating risk and reward. Dangerous but necessary. What's the third marker? I pointed to a long, faint line running beneath a jagged ridgeline marked T. I got excited. This is the biggest prize, the clean steel tunnel. The Elder calls it the Beneath Serpent. The Serpent? His eyes went wide open. That's dramatic, kid. Yep, it is. I replied. It's an old before-world transport tunnel, caved in during the war, but deep inside it's untouched. There are hundreds of steel carriages stuck inside made of pristine steel, only surface rust. Good steel. My voice lifted with a surge of the Elder's strategic ambition. We need this. We take that clean steel back to our stronghold, the vault. We use it to build a fleet of monsters, for faster transportation across the flats, and for improving the defenses of the vault itself. Marius looked from the map to the radio, to the chemical logbook, a slow, predatory grin spreading across his face. This was planning, this was war, and this was where he excelled. Marius grabbed me. A fleet of monsters and a proper base. Now you're thinking like a warlord, kid. The Elder's giving you the edge. We can't hit all 3 at once. What does the Elder say about priority? I told him. The Elder says we must secure the clean steel first. If we have the steel in a fortified base, the rest is just resource collection. He needs the vault strong before we start broadcasting on the radio and drawing attention. He looked me in the eyes. Hard to argue with that. A strong foundation. Clean steel it is then. Let's get a few essentials from this depot, secure the entrance, and move out before dawn. The Beneath Serpent and the Skulkers. They reached the entrance to the Beneath Serpent by mid-morning, the sun already beating down on the corroded landscape. The tunnel mouth wasn't a clean arch. It was a jagged, twisted tear in the earth, a steel maw covered by rock slides and reinforced concrete that had buckled and split. The tunnel's name was fitting. The entrance looked less like a human structure and more like a monstrous metallic throat leading into the dark. Marius stared at the narrow opening, then back at the crude winch they had dragged from the depot. The carriages with the good steel are deep inside, Nikolai. The Elder's right. That steel is precious because it never saw the light of day. But to get to it, we have to crawl past old, jammed maintenance machines and twisted rail lines. It's a crush hazard even if nothing else is in there. Nikolai touched the damp, cold earth near the entrance, feeling the heavy metallic vibrations deep beneath his feet. The Elder was silent now, but his presence was a cold assurance. This was the right place. The Elder showed me the path, Marius. It's unstable but clear. We need to go in light, clear the path to the carriages, and start cutting out the sections. If we can get 2 carriages of steel out of here, the vault will be almost unbreachable. They slid past the initial pile of rubble, Marius going first, flashlight beam cutting a path through the suffocating gloom. The air immediately became colder, denser, and smelled strongly of rust, stale oil, and something else. A musky, unwashed smell that spoke of long-term human habitation. "Hold up, kid," Marius whispered, raising a hand. The tunnel had narrowed drastically. The twin rail lines below were bowed and twisted, and a massive ventilation fan, its blades fused by corrosion, blocked the ceiling. They had to crouch to get through. It was then they heard it. Not the scuttling of a lizard or the drone of an acid roller, but the faint rhythmic shing of metal being sharpened against rock, followed by a low, guttural murmur. "Human. They're squatting on the supply," Marius muttered, pulling the scavenged blade from his belt. "They smell the steel too." As they edged further in, navigating the tight confines, the flashlight beam caught movement near a collapsed service duct. A pair of eyes, wide, yellow, and reflecting the light like a starved animal, blazed in the darkness. Before Marius could react, a small, heavily armed figure, armored in patches of rusted sheet metal and leather straps, launched itself out of the shadows. It moved low and fast, a blur of dark rags and sharp, serrated metal pulled from a broken ventilation grate. "Mine! The serpent claims all!" a raspy voice shrieked. Marius sidestepped the wild lunge, bringing his own blade down in a clean block. The attacker stumbled back, eyes flickering nervously toward the beam of light. "That's a skulker," Marius hissed, adrenaline surging. He shoved Nikolai deeper into the narrow space behind the fused fan. "Get back. Don't let him corner you." Marius pressed the attack, forcing the skulker back toward the deeper shadows. "They're not raiders, Nikolai, they're the remnants," Marius grunted, parrying a desperate slice. When the tunnels buckled during the 10 Years' War, the maintenance crews and the low-caste engineers were trapped deep inside. They've been down here for decades. They adapted to the dark and they guard this place like a tomb because the clean steel is the only currency they know. They fear the sun now. They call it the Great Acid. The skulker, realizing the light was too much, retreated further into the constricted space, melting into the shadows of the twisted rail carriage ahead. They heard a quick tapping sound, a signal. "They move in groups, kid. Never alone," Marius warned, his breath ragged. He pointed the flashlight ahead, revealing not one pair of eyes, but 3, yellow and gleaming, lining the twisted tunnel ahead. "We've got company, and they know the tunnels better than the Elder does." The Elder's containment plan. The sudden rush of confrontation energized the Elder. A clear mental image flooded Nikolai's mind. A map of the tunnel's immediate structure, highlighting a small reinforced door just past the third skulker. The Elder spoke in my mind. "The ventilation core. Past the triple junction. Lure them in. It's an atmospheric lock. Steel walls. Perfect seal. We trap them, or we kill them. The choice is yours, little one." Nikolai ignored the cold finality of the Elder's last words. He knew the goal was preservation, not execution. "Marius! The small door on the right, past the junction!" Nikolai yelled, pointing the flashlight directly at the floor to avoid dazzling his father. "It's the old ventilation engine room. We can seal them in." Marius didn't question it. The kid had a sixth sense, and right now that was better than a tactical map. He feigned a retreat, backing up quickly and loudly, dragging his boot along the rails. The skulkers, smelling easy prey, poured out of the shadows, their jagged scrap weapons raised. "They're hungry and they're blind in this light," Marius shouted, retreating toward the door Nikolai indicated. "Get ready to throw the bolt, kid." Marius used the flashlight like a weapon, sweeping the beam across the pale, light-sensitive faces of the attackers, momentarily disorienting them. He pulled up short just before the narrow, reinforced door, dropping his blade and kicking a heavy, rusted section of rail toward the approaching skulkers. The skulkers tripped over the metal, giving Marius the precious seconds he needed. He slammed the small door open. It was miraculously unwelded, and lunged in, spinning around to shove Nikolai inside. "The skulkers hate anything that seals them away from the metal," Marius gasped, pulling the heavy doorframe. "They're coming." 2 skulkers were already on the threshold. Marius roared and threw his entire weight against the first, pushing him back. The skulker shrieked in frustration, but the second one managed to wedge a serrated piece of metal between the door and the frame. Nikolai, his eyes wide, spotted the locking mechanism, a huge, corroded rotary handle. Guided by the elder's insight, he ignored the skulker's weapon and focused all his energy on the lock. He felt the familiar cold surge of power. With a groan of twisting steel that echoed through the tunnel, the jammed lock snapped into place. The door shuddered, sealing shut with a final, echoing metallic thunk. The skulkers outside began to hammer against the thick steel, screaming curses in a raspy, forgotten dialect. Marius leaned against the sealed door, his chest heaving, listening to the muffled fury outside. That won't hold forever. They'll find a way out, or call for reinforcements from deeper down. Nikolai checked the lock, his adrenaline starting to fade. The elder showed me. It's a full atmospheric seal meant to hold pressure. It will buy us the time we need to load the ghoul getter. Marius clapped Nikolai on the shoulder. Good call, kid. You just neutralized the problem without a single cut. Now let's find that clean steel. The prize and the price. The sound of the trapped skulkers was a constant grating reminder as Marius and Nikolai moved past the junction. Fortunately, the old maintenance track, running parallel to the main, twisted rail lines, was clear enough to bring their scavenged vehicle through. See, kid? The ghoul getter fits right down this path, Marius whispered, patting the hood of the battered but tough vehicle. It was a pre-war utility truck, armored with thick plate and running on high-torque, acid-resistant tires. The clean steel carriages were exactly where the elder had promised. 3 luxury transport cars, derailed but perfectly sealed, their high-grade alloy bodies pristine beneath a thin veil of surface rust. They worked quickly and brutally. Marius used a portable plasma cutter from the hidden depot while Nikolai kept watch and stabilized the heavy cut sections of steel. They sliced away entire body panels, thick sheets of pure, unblemished material perfect for fortifying the vault and building the fleet of monsters. After nearly 2 hours, the ghoul getter's flatbed was groaning under the weight of 2 full carriages worth of steel. It was more than enough. Time to leave, Marius said, wiping sweat and grime from his face. This haul is worth more than gold, and I don't want to be here when they figure out how to bypass that lock. Nikolai nodded, but held up a hand. He pulled a newly cut, flawless sheet of metal, about the size of his hand, from the pile. Guided by the elder's silent instruction, he used the tip of the plasma cutter to quickly score a simple, deep cross into the steel. A gift, Nikolai murmured, placing the clean metal cross on the ground right in front of the ventilation room door. A sign of peace. The elder says they understand payment. They guard the metal, so we leave them the finest piece. Marius watched, skeptical but trusting. A peace offering to starved rats that live in the dark. It's better than a fight, I suppose. It lets them know we came, we took, and we didn't leave empty-handed. They climbed back into the ghoul getter. Marius revved the engine ready to move, but Nikolai was already outside, a thick coil of industrial rope in his hands. He quickly tied one end of the rope around the ventilation room's heavy rotary lock handle, making sure the knot was secure and taut. He brought the other end back to the ghoul getter and secured it to the vehicle's reinforced rear tow hook. When we pull out, Nikolai explained, climbing back into the driver's seat, the rope will pull the lock handle past its breaking point and snap it open, releasing them. We'll be gone before they even blink in the light. Marius gave a slow, predatory grin. A clean getaway and an orchestrated prison break. You really are your mother's son, kid, but you've got a killer edge now. The ghoul getter lumbered forward. The rope snapped taut, protesting the enormous tension. There was a horrifying, drawn-out screech as the heavy steel lock was violently wrenched from its mounting plate. The door to the ventilation room flew inward with a deafening bang as the rope instantly snapped, whipping back into the tunnel. Marius slammed the accelerator down, the heavy truck spitting dust and rocks. They reached the daylight entrance just as the first wave of furious, scrambling skulkers, screaming in rage at the sudden light and the vanished steel, poured out of the ventilation room and into the main tunnel, finding only the metal cross and the empty tracks where their prize had been. Marius didn't stop until they were miles from the Beneath Serpent, the heavy load of clean steel thumping reassuringly on the flatbed. The Iron Serpent and the Ghosts of Utopia. The return journey was slow but uneventful. The haul of clean steel weighed down the ghoul-getter, forcing Marius to navigate the broken, acid-scored plains with extreme caution. We reached the massive blast door of the vault just before twilight. We spent the next day unloading the pristine, heavy sheets. The Elder was pleased. The steel was exactly what was needed: dense, pure, and resistant to corrosion. While most of the steel went into reinforcing the outer shell of the vault, Marius and I set aside the choicest scraps for our current priority: protecting the vehicle that hauled it. The ghoul-getter sat in the main workshop cavern, lifted on heavy jacks. Marius had stripped the undercarriage and the wheel housing, and we began welding heavy curved plates of the clean steel around the tires, turning the wheel arches into vicious, spiked shields. "This is the last time the skulkers get the jump on us," Marius grunted, his torch flashing as he fused the third spiked cover into place. "Anything that tries to grab our wheels or undercut the tires will get shredded. We'll call it the Iron Serpent now. It's earned its new skin." I carefully aligned the remaining spikes on the final wheel cover. "I don't understand why the skulkers didn't just try to trade," I said, pulling down my welding mask. "They had to know the steel was valuable." Marius shut off his torch, the workshop falling into a sudden dull silence broken only by the crackle of cooling metal. He sat on the running board of the newly christened Iron Serpent. "They couldn't trade because they don't know the future, kid. They only know the tunnel. They are ghosts of the collapse," Marius explained, lighting a ration stick. "The only thing they remember is the United States of Europe." I looked up, dropping my tools. "The Elder showed me the flag once, the blue and the gold stars. A myth." "Not a myth, Nikolai. A reality a few decades ago. The USE was everything. No separate nations, no borders, just one colossal, hyper-centralized government spanning the entire continent," Marius said, taking a slow puff. "They controlled everything. Energy, production, transport, and most importantly, the knowledge. They built a utopia," they said. He gestured toward the spiked wheels. "They built a perfect, controlled machine, and like all perfect machines, when one gear broke, the entire thing seized up and tore itself apart." "What broke?" I asked, fascinated by this ancient history. "Arrogance. They started the 10 Years' War over what they called the global resource reallocation, just a fancy name for taking everything that wasn't theirs. When the counterstrikes came, their system of total reliance failed. They couldn't adapt. They had no local infrastructure, no local authority. When the center died, everything died." Marius dropped the butt of the ration stick and crushed it under his boot. "The skulkers were workers trapped deep in the maintenance tunnels, forgotten the second the system collapsed. They're still living under the rules of a government that's been dust for 10 centuries. They guard the steel because the USE told them it was the only thing worth having. That's why we left the cross. It tells them we don't follow their ancient rules anymore. We seek alliance, not ownership." He stood up, looking at the formidable, newly armored Iron Serpent. "The steel is in. The truck is ready. We bought ourselves safety, kid. But the war for the future isn't against the skulkers. It's against the people who are trying to rebuild the USE's kind of power." But then, it dawned on me. I looked at Marius. "Tell me more about the USE. We have a deal, remember?" He smiled, a rare, genuine crinkle around his eyes, and motioned for me to sit on the cool metal floor next to him. "Sit down, kid. I will tell you some more while the Elder is not around. We can have a little break as we finish with the upgrades for the Iron Serpent." I was bursting with curiosity. "What other countries have you traveled in the before world? Can you name some, or do you remember the names?" Marius's face changed, softening with the memory. "Yes, kid, I remember. There was a country called the UK, or for us in the USE, it was known as the United Kingdom, and—" "Wait," I interrupted. "Was that another US? Kind of?" He smiled, shaking his head slightly. "Yes, kid, it was exactly that, only made of just 4 nations. They were the Scotsmen, the Irishmen, the Englishmen, and the Welshmen. And they did have a king." "Wait, a king?" I interrupted again. "Why did they have a king? What was all that about?" Was he stronger than the one lady who was running the USE? Were they separated from the USE, and that's why they had a king? Wow, that is something I never heard of. Huh. King. Was he like the Elder? Marius smiled gently. No, kid. The Elder is much more than just a king. He's leading our lost souls through this wasteland. He cares for us. He will never forgive himself if something happens to any of us. The king was, let's say, a state figure, an image for that union. He didn't have the same power like the kings before our times. Back then, even Romania had a king too, King Mihai I. He abdicated in 1947. He was forced to abdicate and then sent into exile. He was the king during the first 10 Years' War. I was not there, kid, and I can't tell you much about it, only what I can remember from what I learned in school as history. But before that, they were called rulers of the land. Romania did have some good ones. They scared the Ottomans. He was nicknamed as Vlad the Impaler. Hold on, I jumped in. Vlad? Just like the Elder's name? Yep, the same name. Vlad. That is when I realized why the Elder, Vlad, has so much wisdom and power to lead. Something in the blood, in the history, the way Romanians survived. Wow, now I know why the Elder never allows any mistakes. It's because one mistake can cost somebody's life. Tell me more, Marius. I want to record all this in my book because I want us to remember who we really are. I knew something was missing because I saw no wish to give up from anyone, so that is in our blood, right? Yes, kid. We are hardened by sufferings. As a nation that we were, the Romanians are patient. They set the limits very high, but trust me, you don't want to mess with any of them. That's who we are. In the USE, we got bad things thrown at us, but we kept quiet and were probably too separated from the troubles many Romanians were facing in their personal lives. And we were seen as gypsies in most of the USE. Some of us did bad things in the USE, and we all paid the price. All of us. I nodded, looking at the monstrous vehicle. I grabbed his hand. Tell me more, Marius. What other rulers did Romania had in that past you say you've learned in the school? He looked at me and said, Other time, kid. We need to gather the lab parts so we can create the red blood for Iron Serpent. But before we go, we need to talk with the Elder. I looked at him with my eyes big open. I will ask him about Paco while there with me. Kid, I think, Marius began, trying to dissuade me. No, I will ask him. No more hiding, no more waiting. If he will know who you really are, it might help him to ease the pain of past within his soul. I want him to know. Let's make him happy. As we got to his little place, the Elder welcomed us. Immediately, I asked him. Marius tried to hold my shoulder in a sign to wait for a bit, but I couldn't. Elder, do you remember who Paco was? The Elder immediately stopped what he was doing and stood up. Where did you hear that name, kid? Who told you that? Tell me now. I want to know. It is very important to tell me now, kid. It means more than anything for me right now. I looked at the Elder. He didn't just remember it. He was living it. He wasn't angry, and I saw him searching for the answer. I couldn't make him wait no more. Marius told me, he is your son, and I am his son. So, Elder, you found your family. We are here with you, and we will never ever let that happen to you again. You will not lose us again. His eyes started to drop tears. He dropped on his knees. Then he looked upwards and he whispered, Mulțumesc, Doamne. Thank you, God. That moment, I never believed to see such a big and strong man fall on his knees. I realized that not knowing about his family was the biggest pain that was grinding from the inside, but he never let it be seen. Me and Marius got close and embraced him in a tight hug. He whispered again, "Vă iubesc copii mei, I love you kids." He remembered about Marius's wife that we buried here with honor, and he called us. Come to Oana's grave to let her know we're safe and she is safe with us. We need to tell them all that we are a family so we don't raise suspicions. They have the right to know that we all are a big family and nothing will change that. Then he looked at me. Paco was my nickname, kid. I was shy, just like you are, until I got to military service where I learned discipline and courage. I nodded. looking at the monstrous vehicle. Where to next? Next, we go after the resource that makes the Iron Serpent run, Marius said, climbing into the cabin. The fuel. We need to scavenge the bioalgae refineries and storage tanks. We're going to the Black Blood tombs. The journey to the tar lands. The next morning, the Iron Serpent stood ready. A beast of thick, clean steel with spiked tires that promised carnage. We had packed the necessary tools, plasma siphons, heavy-duty barrels, and most importantly, our radiation suits. The elder, now Vlad, our patriarch, saw us off at the blast door. He didn't cry, but his face was softer, radiating a quiet pride. The old refinery still holds the black blood, Vlad instructed, his voice firm, but the place near what used to be Ploiești is now nothing but the tar lands. The ground itself is poisonous. Keep the masks on and don't touch the mud. We will, Paco, I said, smiling, trying out the nickname. He laughed, a rusty sound that filled the cavern. It suits you, little one. Godspeed. Bring back the red blood. The immense blast door slowly ground open, revealing the acid-scored wasteland. Marius drove, the Iron Serpent's engine rumbling deep in its reinforced belly. The tar lands were exactly as the name suggested. A flat, endless expanse of cracked, dark earth stained black and greasy by centuries of residual oil and chemical waste. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of sulfur and rot, making the use of our heavy filtration masks mandatory. There were no hills, only the low, distant silhouette of rusted storage tanks and skeletal refinery towers, the monuments of the before world's greed. The lab parts will be in the central processing plant, Marius said over the comms built into our helmets. It was the last place they tried to produce the red blood, the bioalgae fuel that replaced gasoline right before the collapse. We need the stabilizer components for the mixture. They can't run the vault forever on scavenged battery cores. I scanned the horizon, my eyes stinging even through the goggles. The ground was treacherous, alternating between hardened, razor-sharp crusts of asphalt and thick, oozing pools of black, stagnant sludge. Even the Iron Serpent struggled, its spiked wheels kicking up toxic spray. Do you see movement? I asked. Are the skulkers here too? The skulkers hate the open sun and the poisons, Marius replied, skillfully maneuvering around a gaping sinkhole filled with glowing green residue. This land is guarded by the chemicals themselves. But, he paused, slowing the truck. We're not the only scavengers in the tar lands. Ahead, partially obscured by a shimmering heat haze, were two figures. They weren't the hunched, ragged skulkers. These people were taller, wearing patchwork armor made of motorcycle tires and old plastic barrels. They moved with purpose, patrolling the perimeter of the abandoned refinery like wolves guarding a kill. Looks like we're guests of the tire dogs, Marius grunted, gripping the wheel tighter. Wasteland raiders. They're smart, they're vicious, and they'll kill us just to take those beautiful new spiked tires off this truck. He slowed the Iron Serpent to a crawl, looking for a hidden route around the armed figures. The problem was, in the tar lands, there was no cover. We go silent, or we go loud, kid. Which one will get us the red blood? I gripped the side of the door, peering through the small, reinforced viewport. The tire dogs had spotted us. One raised a makeshift rifle, but the other, their leader, dropped her weapon and started jogging toward us, yelling a challenge we couldn't quite make out over the engine. They want the truck, Marius, I said, my voice tight. They're circling for a quick kill and claim. Then we go loud, Marius said, preparing to floor the engine and run the raiders down. Wait, my loud, I exclaimed, pointing down toward the floor of the cabin. Remember those plasma pipes I routed from the engine core to the chassis? I installed 2 liquid accelerant nozzles under the frame. It's not a weapon, it's a deterrent. Marius glanced at the crudely marked bright red lever I had installed by his knee, labeled with a skull and crossbones. He hadn't asked what it did. A flamethrower, kid? You built a flamethrower under the truck? Not a flamethrower, a ground sanitizer, I insisted, excitement overriding my fear. They're wearing rubber and plastic. The tar land's ground is greasy and flammable. Pull the lever. Give them a warning. The tire dog's leader was now sprinting, followed by her partner, closing the distance to the Iron Serpent's driver's side door. They were close enough to touch. "All right, kid, let's see your sanitation." Marius grinned, his eyes gleaming with mad anticipation. He slammed the lever down. The iron serpent roared, not just from the engine but from two powerful pressurized whooshes beneath the chassis. Twin jets of hyper-accelerated vaporized biofuel shot out, igniting instantly against the superheated exhaust pipes. Two raging plumes of orange and red fire erupted horizontally from beneath the truck, sweeping across the ground directly in front of the raiders. The air instantly shrieked with pain and surprise. The oily, cracked earth of the tarlands wasn't easy to burn, but the chemical residue on the surface flared up for a terrifying second, creating a wall of heat and toxic smoke. The two tire dogs stopped dead, their charge abruptly broken. Their armor, made of scavenged plastics and rubber, was already starting to smoke from the radiant heat. They backed up instantly, abandoning their territorial claims, screaming curses as they stumbled away from the flaming death machine that had just appeared out of the plains. "Told you it was a deterrent," I yelled over the crackle of residual fire. Marius didn't reply, he just laughed, a deep, booming, relieved sound, and stomped on the accelerator. The iron serpent surged forward, the two raiders now just frightened figures shrinking in the rearview mirror. We pushed toward the central refinery towers, leaving the smoking, scorched path behind us. "That's how you make an entrance, kid," Marius said, his voice full of pride. "But now they know we're here and they know what we've got. They'll be waiting at the gates."